A-Hole Podcast. This is Big Will, joined as always by my co-hosts Tom and Justin. And today our guest via Skype is Paul Speckmann, best known for his band Master and his work with Crabathor and many other acts along the way. How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing good. Hanging in there, yo.
All right, glad to hear it, man. And Paul, we have a lot that we want to ask you. There's a lot to your story and your legacy here that is ongoing, and we want to catch up with what's going on. But we always start from the beginning. I wanted to ask you, you're originally from Chicago, Illinois, right?
Yeah. I grew up in Chicago. I grew up in a suburb of Chicago, Mount Prospect. It was maybe an hour from Chicago, you know? The northwest suburbs, they call it.
Okay, and
I grew up in, yeah, go ahead. What?
No, I'm sorry. I'll let you go.
No, go ahead. It's fine. I just grew up in a small suburb of Chicago. No, like I said.
Well, we always ask our guests, are you from a musical family? Are there musicians in your family that predate yourself? Or is there any inclination towards rock or heavy metal from older relatives or something like that?
Not at all. It's like my parents, they were not into music at all. You know, I mean, my mom and stuff was listening to like Barbara Streisand and stuff like this, you know.
Yeah,
my dad wasn't into music at all. I mean, we had a stereo in the basement, but he never really played much. Maybe Herb Albert and the Tijuana Brass.
Everybody had a stereo. You had to have one.
Musical as they were, you know. Or the Carpenters.
Keeping it real.
Well, what about Johnny Cash? Was that getting played when you were a kid?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I heard Johnny Cash until years later, yeah.
Okay, I'm that's kind of like a deep reference here because later on I'm going to get into some of your later Master albums. But before we get into all that, I do know from some of the research that your first band, I believe, was a band called White Cross that was like a high school cover band, and that's why you bought your first bass, right?
Yeah. I joined this band. I was like walking around the school, high school or whatever, singing "All Good People" from Yes. And this guy happened to hear me, Ron Cook. And he said, "Oh, we're looking for a singer in our heavy metal band or whatever, hard rock band. And you want to come and audition?" And I was like, "Well, I guess I'll check it out." And I got the job. You know, we were doing songs like from bands like UFO and Ted Nugent, you know, the flavor of the day, some Black Sabbath, some Thin Lizzy. Like I said, cover songs. But it was a good start, a good beginning for me. And then as time went on, I started watching the bass player, John Bogosian, and I said, I'm going to play bass and stuff. And I quit this band, and I started playing bass at home. And I just remembered one of my friends in the neighborhood saying, "Oh, you're never going to be able to play bass," and blah, blah, blue, blue. And I practiced my ass off until I could play bass, you know, a couple of years, really.
Yeah, the first few years that's the hurdle. And then you can call yourself the player, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I also, from another interview you did, I learned that you actually took some bass lessons, but when the guy couldn't teach you a track off of Iron Maiden's Killers, you quit, and that's when you kind of went independent with bass learning.
Yeah, I took one lesson from the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went back for a second lesson, and I said, you know, can you figure out this part on the song Killers, you know, in the middle, do triplets, you know, and
yeah.
Oh yeah, I can do it, whatever. And I went there, and he didn't figure it out. And so, you know, I took some more of his bullshit lesson there that day, and then I went home and I figured it out by myself. And I said, I don't need a fucking teacher for that. I can do it myself. And that was the end of it for him. No more lessons, you know?
Yeah.
I just started playing along with records, figuring it out myself, you know?
And is it true you ended up working at 7-Eleven and playing bass, trying to learn Steve Harris bass lines while working at 7-Eleven?
Say it again.
Is it true you ended up working at 7-Eleven and trying to learn Steve Harris bass lines after that?
This is true. I worked the night shift at 7-Eleven for about a year. Until I got busted for stealing, yeah.
I was going to ask you if there was any interesting experiences, like somebody else stealing from you or something, but I guess that's what happened.
The point was that, you know, I was eating food in the middle of the night and drinking stuff, and they considered that to be stealing, you know. I mean, you're in a 7-Eleven, and and you're working all night, and you're hungry and shit. Of course, you're gonna steal some nachos and maybe a Pepsi or whatever, you know.
It's right there. Yeah, it should be built into the cost
I mean,
of
it's
having
right
the
there.
employee.
I mean, okay, I wasn't smoking cigarettes, so at least I wasn't stealing cigarettes from the guy, you know. But I was eating food and drinking stuff, and you know, and later on in the year, he's like, oh, you know, there's stuff missing, and I did an inventory, and we're short on food. And I said, well, of course, you know, sometimes I'm eating some stuff, and I'm thirsty. I mean, you got to provide me something here for nutrition, you know. But anyway, the guy ended up coming in and bothering me and stuff, and watching me after a while, and coming in at the night shift and spending the night with me and stuff. And finally, I just quit, you know. But I was practicing bass. I mean, he wasn't there, you know, so I was playing bass. You know, when there weren't a lot of customers in the middle of the night, you know, between say 3 and 7 o'clock, you know, just before the mad rush, I would practice on my bass, of course.
All right, man. That it's just interesting to know, and you know, having traveled around a little bit on the road and been having different type of jobs myself, I know sometimes the night shift can be kind of hectic at those places. You never know who's going to walk in. So, now I ask this respectfully because I've heard you speak very candidly about it in other interviews. You said one time that around that time you also sold weed and were busted by the cops before you started moving furniture. And I'm asking a lot of this because I can relate, and a lot of musicians I know can relate to these type of experiences.
Yeah, this is true, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was dealing weed, you know, and making a living at it and having a good time and smoking the weed too, and and I got busted. Obviously, I got set up by a friend, and life changed after that. And I borrowed money from a buddy of mine who was a truck driver, and I had to start moving furniture. You know, it was a hard time for a couple of years until I paid him back. But point is that I got off with a slap on the wrist because Tom Swift, which is the name of the lawyer, was a buddy of mine. Well, actually, it was a buddy of my manager at the time. I actually had a manager at this time, and Tom Swift got me off with a slap on the wrist. You know, I think I paid $2,000 for the police lunch fund or whatever, and whatever. And I got off on it. I had to borrow the money, like I said, from the truck driver from Lanny, but whatever. I paid him back, and I moved furniture for a few years after that. I actually made a decent living moving furniture.
No, that's a good gig, man.
Yeah, and as I said, I say this all respectfully. I've worked mostly blue-collar labor type jobs myself. And you know, like I said, a lot of people I think can relate to that, especially in the death metal scene. It's kind of a lot of blue-collar musicians.
Yeah.
So around this time now, are we into like 1982 when War Cry formed?
Yes. This is around the time I think I was working in 7-Eleven maybe in 1981.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to look in my notes in here, but it doesn't matter. But yeah, this War Cry. That was the first band I actually played in, where I played bass and I actually wrote a song. And life started picking up with War Cry. You know, we were opening for bands like Twisted Sister and Queensryche and Mountain and Joe Perry Project. You know, we did some of our own shows sometimes too. We started building a following at that time, sure.
Yeah, and I've actually read that amongst other people, Lee Dorian of Cathedral credits War Cry as a bit of an early influence for that Sabbathy doom sound that has kind of gone on to become its own thing over the years.
Yeah, sure. Same with Trouble as well. It was another doom band from Chicago. Obviously, they went a lot further, but yeah, that was obviously we got it from Black Sabbath. You know, obviously. You know?
Yeah.
But I mean, we tried to do our own thing, and that's really how I got started to playing concerts live. Really, you know, I mean, I was actually playing live bass in front of people, and that was a good start for me. You know.
Yeah, and you've actually now I believe the drummer Bill Schmidt. That's how you met him, was in War Cry, right? Who was also the original drummer of Master.
Yeah, well, he auditioned for the band, and after Joe Iacino quit, he auditioned, and we took him on, and started practicing, and he played one show with us and got fired after one show. You know, so he screwed up the song Black Sabbath from Black Sabbath. And he got pissed off and blamed it on the guitar player and threw a drumstick at the guitar player. And that was the end of his one-hit wonder deal with Warcry.
Okay.
Then after that, the Warcry guitar player, Marty Fitzgerald, he turned me on to a 7-inch from Venom. It had Live Like an Angel, Die Like a Devil, and In League with Satan on the back, whatever. And this 7-inch changed my life. I wanted to get heavy. I didn't want to play in Warcry anymore. At this time, Warcry started going more commercial. Motley Crue started taking off, and they decided they want to go in a more commercial direction. And after hearing that Venom, and obviously continually listening to Motorhead and Angel Witch and Judas Priest, I wanted to go in a heavier direction. And the drummer and I, we did,
So I believe you officially start Master in '83, right?
Yeah, we got as far as a couple songs. He wrote a few songs. I wrote a few songs. And then we auditioned guitar players. We couldn't find anybody for a long time. And then he gave up. We couldn't find anybody really that was fit what we were looking for, He basically gave up and joined another band called Mayhem. They changed their name over the years on Facebook and stuff to Mayhem Incorporated. But anyway, they were a band called Mayhem from Chicago. So he went and played drums for them and did a demo, and I started my own band called Death Strike. And then maybe a year later, he came crawling back, and the Mayhem thing didn't work out for him. He got as far as a demo, but I don't know. He wasn't easy to get along with. But like an idiot, the next year I took him back, and the rest is history, pretty much.
Okay, because there's a lot to sort. There's a lot. That you have an extensive discography, and there's a lot to sort out as a fan.
Sure.
So just to stop you there, Master kind of takes off from Warcry, but then you guys don't work it out yet. So that's where Death Strike comes in.
Exactly, because Master didn't get as far as recording anything. Mm-hmm. Death Strike was first. Because, like I said, we couldn't find a guitar player. Schmidt was ready to record some songs that he had written, but we never found a guitar player. So we were just playing bass and drums. And then, like I said, he quit his own band, whatever. He quit the band Master. And my father passed on, and I was left at my house while the house was up for sale, showing the house, and I was playing bass in the basement. And I had a PA system down there, and I was singing, and I wrote the song called "The Truth," And Middlebrun, the guitar player for Master, who would end up being in the band Master later, he actually was one of the guys that auditioned, and he was more in Judas Priest at the time and the Twin Guitar Attack and a lot more commercial stuff. Anyway, and so I read an ad in the Illinois Entertainer, this trade magazine. It's still in existence today, and there was Chris in there again, and I called him. And he and I would end up putting together Death Strike.
Okay, and Death Strike, if I got it right, you record the album Fucking Death in '85, and it's not released until '89?
Exactly. It was only a demo. It wasn't an album.
Okay.
The second part, we recorded another demo in '91 with a different lineup and ended up putting the whole thing out as an album. But the original band, yeah, was in '85. You got it right.
And then also in '85 is that original Master.
You got it, Master. That's what I said. He ended up crawling back to me in the band, and on July 4th, actually, '85. And by October, we were recording the Master demos as well. So that was a busy year in 1985 for me.
It seems like that. And what I'm getting at is that we've brought up this conversation back and forth over it's a very common, frequent conversation nowadays of who was quote unquote the first death metal band, and it gets boiled down into this kind of binary argument between Possessed Seven Churches and Death Scream Bloody Gore a lot of the time. And I'm trying to make the point that in 1985, you kind of recorded what's considered two of the seminal death metal recordings in Death Strike and Master in 1 year.
You got it.
Yeah.
I just, for some reason we got lost in the shuffle because we didn't sign that contract with Combat Records. That was where we screwed up, We got a contract, and the contract came on what was it? December 31st, 1985. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we got the contract, and then that famous idiot Kim Fowley happened to be hanging out and doing something in the studio there at Sea Grape Studios in Chicago, where we did a lot of our recordings. And they called me from the studio and said, this famous guy is here and blah, 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 and why don't you come over and meet him? And we went to meet him, and one thing led to another, and he said he would read our contract. Well, he turned that combat contract into a $1 million contract. This is a guy that wrote songs for Kiss. He was the pervert that was managing the Runaways, raping some of the girls in the band. We would find out later or whatever, but they're still talking about that now. He wrote songs for Kiss. He was a famous guy. So he charged me $1 a minute and read that contract for about 200 hours in some mansion somewhere in the suburbs. He was like renting a bedroom in some guy's mansion. I forget who the big guy was at the time. It was a long time ago. But anyway, he charged me $1 a minute, and he turned the contract into a multi-million dollar contract. And of course, Combat, when they read that, they threw it in the garbage. That was the end of it. They were only offering like $1,000 to record, man. These contracts that Death and Possessed signed or whatever, they were for no money, dude.
And just
for peanuts. I mean, it was a shit contract. I think it was like 3 or 4 albums they wanted, and they were giving you $1,000 to record, and it was really shitty,
Yeah.
At that time, they didn't know what they had, and nobody knew that this style was going to blow up,
Right.
Yeah.
So we made a mistake, like I said, we made a mistake, of course. If we would have signed that contract, things would have been a lot different, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, you can always think back, and just a disclaimer quickly, just because of the similarity. You're talking about Kim Fowley, a famous kind of music business personality, behind the scenes person, completely unrelated to King Fowley of Deceased.
Exactly.
We recently
nothing to do with the guys. Kim Fowley.
Yeah,
I said, he was the infamous manager of the Runaways.
Yeah,
Joan Jett and Nina Ford, that guy.
People can Google that if they have a strong constitution. But that's interesting there. So I guess that's kind of like, we talk about recording those albums, particularly the master album in '85, and it doesn't really see the light of day until '89, '90, and maybe that's why it doesn't get the recognition.
Well, exactly.
So
a lot happened during that time. We got lost in the shuffle. But I mean, you go back in history and stuff, and you talk to a lot of these bands, and the Swedish scene, for example, the whole Scandinavian scene was also influenced by the Death Strike demo. A lot of these guys will tell you that,
Well, something I wanted to ask you about when we talk about bands, obviously back in the 80s, you were kind of there in the heyday, in the beginning of the tape trading scene and underground metal, right?
Sure, that was a good time. Sure.
We celebrate. I'm a little bit younger. I got in at the tail end of it in the 90s before the internet really took over with the file sharing and everything. And we talk about it from time to time. Something I picked up in an interview that you did was that Chris Riefert from Autopsy actually called you up, threatening you over some sort of debacle about tape trading, and you guys have since squashed that.
Actually, he sent me money for the Abomination demo and a T-shirt, and it never arrived. Well, whatever. I sent him another one.
It happened.
I sent him another one, and he called back and said, "Hey, man, sorry, I love your music, and I got the stuff now." And I'm like, okay, shit happens. The world is small, of course.
Yeah, well, a lot back then, the death metal scene was a lot smaller too, right?
Yeah, like, for example, Bill Steer, he sent me the Napalm Death Patch when he quit the band. He said, I got a new band, it's called Carcass, and it's going to do something in the future, and cool, Paul. And he sent me this killer Napalm Death Patch. It's a rare one. I got it somewhere still. But I mean, it was a handwritten letter. Obviously, back in the day, we wrote each other. There was no computer back then. It was a lot different. It's really sad that I burned all those letters. I had a couple garbage bags full of those letters. I got pissed off one day and started a fire at my parents' house in the backyard and burned them all,
Oh, man. Those probably
That's
some
too
cool
bad.
stuff in
'Cause I
there.
would
Yeah.
have some. I would have some good shit to share with people, but whatever. Shit happens, right?
Yep. Well,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
still a good story, though. Got that
Yeah.
at least.
It's better than not being able to find them.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, well, that's interesting because I mean, I'm a lifelong death metal fan. I've been in different bands and stuff. I know what it's like to really take this stuff personally and have a lot of passion for it. You obviously have accomplished and have been at it for much longer than me. So what I'm getting at is the kind of the struggle, the pain, the personal sacrifice that goes along with it. Does that speak to it? Well, why you would burn these letters and stuff? Was it a period where you just weren't getting what you wanted out of the music?
Exactly. It was a period where nothing was happening with my band. I was getting no respect, no success, nothing. I got pissed off and went in the backyard and just burned all the shit to the ground, to ashes.
Wow.
And like I said, looking back on it, I wish I didn't do that because I had some great letters in there that would have fucking confused the shit out of a lot of people if I shared them, A lot of people would have been interested and go, wow, did they really say that? What the fuck? Doesn't matter. That's water under the bridge. Hindsight's 2020, that routine.
Well, that's a great perspective, and especially to maybe people who are struggling with their own things in life now to remember. And getting back on the bands, you kind of explained for us what the deal was with Deathstrike and Master, and if people were a little confused on the timeline. Something I'm interested in also is Abomination, because that's a band that kind of is completely outside of that circle of Deathstrike and Master, right? That you joined.
Okay, so what happened is next was Funeral Bitch.
Okay.
I joined a band called Assault in Chicago. They were originally called Assault. And the guitar player said, oh, we should change the name to Funeral Bitch. And so we changed the name to Funeral Bitch, which was a Master song. That was in probably late 86, And we did a couple Master songs, and he wrote some songs, and we did some Assault songs. And it was more kind of grindcore sort of stuff, really fast and ridiculous with the silly blast beats and stuff. I say silly because back then it was silly to me, whatever. A lot of bands had a lot of success with blasting, so don't get me wrong. I'm just saying. But back then it was kind of silly to me because it was new. And so what happened there is that I would go and practice with this Funeral Bitch. We did some shows. We played with the Cro-Mags and some decent shows. And again, we were like the local guys filling in, trying to get all the good slots, and we did. We got some decent slots in Chicago. And anyway, so late night, like with a woman or whatever, you're cheating on your girlfriend or whatever, or your wife. Not that I do that, but
Allegedly.
Is that I was cheating on the guys, and I stole I saw the drummer from Abomination. He was in a band called Abomination. They already had a band called Abomination. And so I would practice with Funeral Bitch, and then an hour later, I would get in my car and I would drive over to another part of Chicago and jam with the other guys till the morning hours for another 3 hours, and till maybe 3 o'clock in the morning. And eventually, I would leave Funeral Bitch and just join this drummer, and he stole the name Abomination and said, "This is my name. I paid for all this shit," and blah blah blue blue. And so then we became Abomination. We got the guitar player from Impulse Manslaughter, Mike Schaefer. And we started working on a demo. And so that was Abomination. That was 87 and 88. We had a different guitar player in 88 and 88. And so then we got the record deal again in 89 from Nuclear Blast. And that was for Abomination. And then also within a week, we got another record deal for Master as well in 89.
Busy.
Any questions?
Years.
Yeah, I'm just trying to trying to get it all straight.
Yeah.
Trying to get it all straight.
Yeah, it's easy, man.
and I have a follow-up question about Abomination.
Sure.
But first, just to catch the listeners and myself up, we're talking about Deathstrike and Master, recorded in '85. Those, because the Deathstrike album or the recording was finally released properly in what was it, 91 or 90?
Yeah, 91, sure. But it was only a demo, like I said. And in 91, we also did another demo with 4 more tracks with different people. okay, they're good songs and stuff, but we didn't capture the same sound. I don't like it so much, but whatever. The songs are good, but we didn't capture the feeling, and that's a reality that I learned at that time too, is that you can't go back. You're never going to capture what you did 30 years ago. It's not happening, dude. You have to go forward. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Interesting. Especially this day and age. And I'll leave it at that. With other acts in respect to other bands.
Yeah, well, it's other technology and stuff. You know what I mean? Things are more polished today. You know, I always talk about this when I talk about old school. Back in the day, you know, you really had to know how to play your instrument, dude. There was no punching, you know.
Yeah.
If the drummer didn't know how to play the song, or he fucked up the song, you had to do it again and again and again and again until you got it right. Today, you can go in the studio and a drummer hits a bad cymbal or a tom or a snare or whatever, and you just punch it in on a computer, and it's fixed in 10 seconds or less, you know. But back when we were recording the Abomination and the Master and the Funeral Bitch and the Death Strike and stuff, you really had to fucking know how to play the songs. You know, you had to practice a lot. You had to be ready because you didn't have the money to spend even back then. You know, I'm just saying you didn't have money.
Yeah, I think that speaks to like how back in the day you had bands, each with their own identity, that were working, and now you have this proliferation of, I guess, more like projects, because the technology has allowed people to record music a lot more easily. You know.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to say, is that I still record in the studio. I still bring the band to the studio. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right now, this, you know, with all this bullshit for the last 8 months or whatever, or 9 months, I could have recorded a new master album. I could have done a million projects, you know, but I'm not into it. It's not real for me, you know. I'm not saying that I don't record with, like, I do this project, the Johansson Speckmann project. We just released like the 5th album, and he actually sent me a new song today for album number 6. So,
wow.
And
yeah,
but
he's
the
a busy
point is,
dude
with
too.
them, I will say that the difference with them, they send me the whole album recorded, and then I actually still go to a studio, and then I sing the tracks, and then they mix and master it over there in Norway or whatever, you know. But what I'm saying, I still go to a studio. I'm not sure if they're recording at home. Maybe they are, you know. I really don't care. I guess in that retrospect. But I still go to a studio to do my vocals as well. I'm not going to do them at home. It's just not real to me, you know?
I can respect that. I understand. I'm also very hesitant to keep up with technology, so to speak.
So this is the reason why there is no master album right now, because the lineup, the newer lineup, it's the guys are in America. One's in Miami and one's in Los Angeles. And until we can get together and record, I'm not going to do an album. Or I'll do an album with some other people out here. You know, we'll see what happens. The reality is this coronavirus is fucking up my life. But on the other hand, like I said, you know, we could record online. The guys could send me their parts, but it's just not it's not real to me, and it's just not the spark that I'm looking for. I want to do it. I want to sit down and write these songs with you in the studio. You know, I want to practice them, be ready, and go in and record them. I don't want to do it online. It's strange to me. Maybe I'm a weirdo or something, but it's strange to me, really.
I think that's the kind of old school mentality that Master fans have come to expect and respect. And the question I wanted to ask you about Abomination before we get too far ahead into how Master works nowadays as an international band and everything, I noticed for the self-titled Abomination album, the first one, if I could say, they were like kind of odd time signatures, and it seemed very technical and rhythmically kind of unique. Whereas in '91, the Tragedy Strikes follow-up album was a lot more straightforward and locked into the groove. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it was a lot more polished in a sense, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's because when we did the first Abomination record, we really didn't know what the fuck we were doing. and that's actually what made it special. You know, we were playing a million miles a minute in a bunch of parts, and like you said, it's strange time changes and stuff, and we really didn't know what we were doing. It was something new for us, you know. And the only problem with that record it's the quality of the mix or whatever. Which because the guys they wanted to use this guy. His name was Bob Pucci, and it even sounds like a dog, like a woman or whatever. But anyway, there was like some commercial heavy metal bands. You know, they were like commercial, and the guys were like, "Oh, Paul, you know, we want to try this studio and stuff," and they got this great heavy metal stuff coming out of there, and hey. The heavy metal stuff really was great, but it was really slow and not so crazy and technical and insane. And so we went in there to this poser studio and recorded this shit. And it was really hard to do, you know. I mean, the guy had, you know, the poofy hairstyle and everything. And, you know, I mean, no disrespect to Bob Pucci. You can find him on Facebook, I'm sure. But but that was a mistake. Now, the point is, now the second album was, like you said, smoother and not so many changes. And that had a lot to do with me because I was the one who produced the album. It's got a way crunchier tone. It's heavier in that sense. But maybe you're right. Maybe we smoothed it out a little too much. You know, maybe it was more like Master in a sense, the second album. But I still think there's some good tracks on it. But the first one was way out there. I think you're right.
Well, yeah, I don't say that to downplay Tragedy Strikes. It's good in its own right.
You know, I got
yeah, but the self-titled album, the first one, what I thought was interesting about it is not only nowadays, but in the last several years, you've had tech death and technical death metal become its own thing, and that first Abomination album kind of predates a lot of that with the quirky time signatures and all that. So that's why I ask.
No, that's cool. I appreciate that. Yeah. Nobody ever actually said that to me before. That's interesting.
We try to do all the research. It's great.
Yeah, well, you definitely got the research there. You know, and the one thing I wanted to say about Funeral Bitch is that this band Funeral Bitch, maybe you never heard the demos. If you haven't, go back and check it out. This stuff predates Napalm Death and stuff, and same thing. It was way ahead of its time. You listen to that silly McMack Attack song or whatever, for example, and it was like Stormtroopers of Death, you know, but our crazy style of it, you know. So it predates Napalm Death, and they were saying, like in Kerrang! Magazine, that these famous guys like Don Kay were telling me, "Slow down, dude," you know. They were like into the Master, and they thought the Abomination and the Funeral Bitch were just too aggressive and too crazy and fast, and then some of these bands really started hitting it really big, and I thought, wow, these guys are burning me, and these other bands that are doing the same shit we were doing a year before are having huge success. And that's basically what happened in a lot of times to me. You know? We were always like early and didn't get the respect because something happened, you know.
Yeah,
that's life.
Timing is everything, you know. Being the first to do it isn't always gonna pay off, you know.
I agree. But whatever. The great thing about my life is that I made it into a life. I don't have some shitty job. I know that there's a bunch of guys out there in these bigger bands right now that are looking for jobs and working at Burger King and McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts. I've heard some real horror stories. You know what? Not me. I make money from my music. T-shirts, sweats, shorts, patches, etc. You know?
Yeah, and
even when I'm not touring, I'm still working right here in my little bedroom office. It's wonderful.
Nice.
So it sounds nice.
Well, let's go back to where we were. Sorry, I jumped ahead of you there.
No, it's you're painting a nice, cozy picture, and I do want to get into your life, I guess, since moving forward in the Czech Republic and what's going on there. But there's a lot of ground to cover here.
Okay, let's keep going. No problem.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. I took my notes diligently here. And as we move on, we talked about Abomination. I dropped that. Now, we're in 1991, so we got to mention, and on the seventh day, God created Master.
Okay.
Well, you know, an album that's probably one of your most notable ones that people associate Master with in the context of that.
25,000 copies.
Yeah, well, so you know better than me. Now,
it sold 5,000 copies. Yeah.
Sold 5,000 copies.
25,000.
25,000 copies. Okay, that sounds better.
Uh-huh.
Now, what I want to know about that is that, you know, we talk about how in '85 you were already doing it. Then you had some difficulties with getting it out there. Other bands come along that are kind of influenced and doing something similar. They blow up. Now it's 91. Was it your choice?
Let's go back a little bit further. Let's go back just a touch further. Let's go back to 89.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like I was saying to you, we got those offers for Abomination and Master Records, you know?
Okay.
And in 89, we went in the studio and recorded that. We practiced for 2 days to do the Master debut. And without the guitar player, the guy was always too busy with chicks, which is fine. I like chicks too. Women are great, okay. But after several years of not jamming together, I managed to get a record deal for these guys, thanks to Abomination. Abomination got the record deal for Master, okay. Mm-hmm. And actually, that whole thing came together with Joe Caper from Righteous Pigs. I ran into him at the Forest Preserve when I was moving furniture during that shitty time after I got arrested. I went to the forest and with my buddy Mick, and we were drinking some old styles, and these two Harley Davidsons pull up, and it's Joe Caper's on one of them and Paul Ninos from high school on another, and we're talking and stuff, and Caper's like, Paul, how you doing, man? I love fucking Master and Destroy. You don't remember me, I'm sure. And honestly, I didn't remember him, okay? He was right, okay? But the reality here is that he's like, we're on this new label with my band Righteous Pigs, and it seems to be working. It's a label called Nuclear Blast. And I say, I just happen to have this fucking demo in my pocket, because at that time I was so hard up and desperate trying to make something happen that I was walking around with the Red Abomination demo in my pocket, and I gave it to Joe Caper. And 1 week later, I had a record deal for Abomination. And a week after that, because of Mitch Harris, he put in the word to Nuclear Blast that they should sign Master. Well, a week later after that, I got the Master contract. Anyway, okay.
Okay, all right. That's a good segue there. Now, and then. How is it your choice, or is the label's influence to record with Scott Burns at Morris Sound Studio? Because that was obviously obviously a very hot move.
Here's what happened. So we ended up doing that Master demo, the Master record at Solid Sound in studios in Chicago, and Nuclear Blast. They didn't like the mixes we did. They said, it doesn't have a good sound, and it's too heavy, and blah 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 blah, and so then we said, okay, so we'll go and record in Morris Sound with Scott Burns. So we went in there and the lineup changed. I used Aaron Nikias on drums from Abomination, and Jim Martinelli from a famous band from Chicago called Burnt Offering, another underground legend that didn't make it either. But anyway, so I got these guys together, and we went to Morris Sound, and we recorded the songs again, added some other songs that I had originally written for Death Strike and Master years ago. They fell by the wayside, whatever. And then Nuclear Blast decided again, we don't like it. Okay. We don't like the recording that he did in Morris Sound. So we're going to have Scott Burns remix the first Master recording he did in Hoffman Estates at Solid Sound and release that as Master. And because we put so much money into the second recording, we're going to release that as the Speckmann project. Does that clear up anything or not?
That does. It helps clear up a lot now, because that's the thing too, is that you got the Speckmann project, you got the Master, and
Maybe.
Now that's you're talking about the first Master album, I guess you could call it the self-titled album.
You got it.
When we get to On the Seventh Day God Created Master, is it a similar situation why you end up working?
No, now this time, okay, now we get to On the Seventh Day, which is a year later, okay?
Yes.
Let's say 91, whatever. We get there, and I record a demo with Martinelli, Burnt Offering, and Aaron on drums for On the Seventh Day, and Nuclear Blast and Scott Burns hear the demo and say, we're not ready. So the demo, they said the songs, they didn't like the songs, that we weren't ready. And I told them to stick it up their ass. And we went and recorded on the 7th day anyway. And 25,000 copies later, well, I guess we were ready, weren't we?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I just reviewing the album in research, it was good for me as a fan. I'm not a record label guy.
A lot of strange things that happened. That's all I can tell you.
Well, the question I want to get to is why? How do you end up working with Paul Masvidal, who people know from Cynic?
Okay, there you go. Good question. Okay, so Martinelli. He with a buddy, a roadie friend of ours from Burnt Offering, comes with Martinelli to record on the 7-day sessions. And the guys decide after a couple of days we just started recording, the guys decided to stay out all night, drink too much, come back, and start an argument with our then short-lived manager Jim. And they got into a shoving match and fuck you and blah, blah, and Jim Martinelli went home. So then I called in a buddy, another guy from Chicago, flew him out there. And Scott Burns didn't like Jeff's guitar playing, so Jeff got smoked and had to just hang out for a week because he got a ticket, and he was stuck there basically hanging out with Aaron, the drummer, after the drums were recorded, doing nothing.
Wow.
He really got burned the most, but anyway, so Scott Burns called up Masvidal, and Masvidal came down. He flew down. It cost me $100 to fly him down, which was nothing. And then I think maybe we paid him $100 a song, and what he would do, which was really interesting and cool, I thought, is that we put each song on a loop for an hour. And he would just play a solo for an hour, and then we'd go in and he would record it. And that was really cool, actually.
Okay. Wow.
So this is how Masvidal got in there. Masvidal, like I said, everything was really, really reasonably priced. And John Tardy came in and did some backups on the album for a 6-pack of beer because, of course, he was friends with Burns. And I guess maybe Burns thought something about Master. Later on, he would say, oh, fuck Master, and I don't know what they were, but whatever. Tardy came in for a 6-pack of beer, and Masvidal was cheap too, I appreciate their help. Don't get me wrong. They were a big help.
Valuable.
Of course.
Valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah, valuable, good players, good help, and I would never say anything bad about that. But I will say one thing, Masvidal, for the last 20 years or whatever, longer after that, he doesn't like the album. He said the solos are shitty and blah, blah, blah. I actually like some of the solos. I thought they were pretty good.
Yeah, they're fun. I really enjoyed those leads.
Yeah, me too, but he said they weren't any good. But whatever, to each his own, I still respect the guy and wish him the best and whatever. It's fine,
Well, everybody looks back at their own progression and their own discography with their own eyes. As a fan, it's kind of an interesting mashup, being able to be a fan of both Cynic and Master and know the history and listen to that album.
And that's cool. So, like I said, no disrespect. I was just a little taken aback when he said he didn't like them. I like the solos. I think he did a good job, especially for the time he had. Come on. He had an hour for each solo. He did it all in one day. It was fucking fantastic.
So, yeah, and it's actually cool to re-listen to, thinking about that and that process. And like you said, 25,000 copies later. Now, I mean, while we're talking about this, because that, like I said, that kind of is an album that gets brought up a lot in context, and Master has a huge discography. Have you been making any plans lately to reissue anything, maybe particularly on like vinyl or cassette, like a lot of people are doing now? Is there anything coming up?
Everything has been reissued a million times, man. Where you been?
I know, and then it sells out real quick, and we're still stuck trying to collect them, man. You got it's a cycle.
I think that on the 7 days has been reissued at least 10 times already,
Yeah. Well, I just figured you might have the yearly reissue report or something,
But I mean, every 2 years, somebody wants to reissue the first album, the second album, some of the later ones, or they want to do vinyl or cassettes, and and then I get copies of the stuff, and the shit sells out in a month. It's like I've been living out the first 2 albums for 20 years. which is actually pretty cool if you think about it.
Oh yeah, it's an investment, man.
That's
I'm not complaining,
That's the dream
It
for
worked.
a lot of metal musicians. I'm waiting for like a box set of tapes of like the Czech years or something like that, and I'll just scoop that up when it comes out.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe someday. I mean, that's the point. Is that what's strange and interesting at my age is that every year there's more offers for new records, for new contracts from all over the world. Yeah.
Well, it
Doesn't stop is what I'm trying to say. It's still for a new record, for old records, for everything. It just continues, yeah.
I think. Well, I've heard it said that as opposed to maybe pop music and hip hop, heavy metal tends to respect its elders and its pioneers more as new generations come and go.
Which is a great thing, yeah.
Yeah,
You're right.
and something on that note. I did watch a YouTube interview that you did when you were on tour in the Netherlands in 1990, and if I got it right, you were playing 2 shows a day.
Oh man, yeah. That interview is terrible. I was so fucking retarded at that time, but I was a young guy.
That's what Paul Masvidal is saying about the solos,
actually,
man.
I just want to say I actually just saw that interview maybe 2 weeks ago, the first time ever. I never saw it before. And when I saw that interview, I just said, "What a fucking asshole."
Well, we all look back at ourselves, man.
Yeah.
But
okay.
But there was
But go back to what you said. Yeah, we did, and this might have been part of the reason why I was an asshole, because I was tired for one thing. We did Abomination was the support band, Pungent Stench was the co-headliner, Master was the headliner. I did 26 dates like this.
Jeez.
Wow.
So that may have something to do with why I was such an asshole in that interview. I was thinking about that. It was a hard time,
Yeah,
I did the same years later with Master and Cravathor, but it was much easier then. I wasn't the lead vocalist in Cravathor. I was just doing backups mostly. I sang a few songs. With Abomination and Master, I had to sing 2 sets every night, just change a shirt during Pungent Stench and try and wipe off the sweat, and then go up and say, "Hey, good evening, it's me again. We're Master."
Yeah, I mean that's putting in work, man. And something you said kind of profoundly in that interview. The reason I bring it up is,
Okay.
The guy asked you. He said, well, a lot of bands say they're going to come back and they don't. And something you said was, well, whether it's me and a bunch of other guys, I'll be here. I'm talking about returning to Europe and returning to the Netherlands. And you said that in 1990. It's pretty fair to say you held your end of the bargain there.
That's true.
Yeah,
I ended up moving to Europe. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I thought that was a profound moment, and it kind of sets the tone maybe for some of the later questions I'm gonna ask you about. Moving there and everything. And something I want to ask you, as we kind of move out of the early 90s and that period, and we start talking about the later 90s, in the later 90s, anyway, over here in the United States in New York, my perception was that after the big death metal boom of the early 90s, it wasn't all about heavy metal anymore. It was about hardcore and bands like Korn and things like that. And the Norwegian bands with the face paint kind of got big. Do you think that might have contributed to how you decided to move to Europe to perform metal? Was it just not viable anymore in the United States to play metal?
Yeah, I was just working and stuff, moving furniture, and getting drunk and trying to figure out a way to do something else, trying to keep the band going somehow, make it viable. It was hard times, Yeah, I have to agree with you. The music scene changed for a while, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, in the late 90s, it was not fashionable to be into metal.
Then I got a lucky break. I never gave up. I put together a new band and stuff, and let's say between let's think this through here. So, say 94, 95, 96. I was really struggling at that time and working, and I couldn't keep a band together and get it to work for me the proper way. I think I did a demo in 1995, and that got sparked just a little bit of interest in Europe. And then in 1998, I put together another lineup in Arizona, and we signed to Pavement Records. And then my life changed because a German company was a new partner of Pavement, and the guy decided to release the record in Germany, and my life changed. Ever since then, I've been here. After '98, I left, and in '99 we did a European tour, and then in 2000 I moved here, and here we are in 2021 nearly. And I've been here that whole time.
Well,
all because I never gave up. And like I said, I tried, and we got this crappy record deal from Pavement. There was no money in it. It was just a distribution deal, nothing more. He didn't pay anything. I think we got a box of CDs or something, 25 CDs for that deal, something like this. But I took it,
Yeah.
And just to get a CD out there, and fucking it got me to Europe the following year. And obviously everything changed after that, I don't know what would have happened if I didn't get out of there.
Yeah.
I was depressed and struggling with life, and now life is good.
Wow, man. So I know that in 1999, Master goes on a tour with Malevolent Creation and Crabathor.
Yes.
And that's where you meet the Crabathor guys, and the seed is planted for you to come. Is it Bruno, the guy that you replaced? Did I get that right?
Yeah, Bruno quit. Yeah, he quit, and then the guys called me and said, "Paul, would you think about coming out here and jamming with us or what?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm ready to get the fuck out of here. I'll move out right away."
So you were ready to go.
So I was living in Arizona. I was living in Phoenix at the time, moving furniture with another company.
Wow.
And living with my buddy and his girlfriend in a house. And we had just gotten that record deal, with Pavement. Like I said, this was shortly after that, and I got Crabathor a record deal on System Shock, which was the Pavement subsidiary in Europe as well. And so that all worked out for me, for sure. It got me out. I sold all my shit in 2 weeks. I came to the Czech Republic and rented an apartment for 6 months, and it was a difficult struggle, but we practiced, and we played shows all summer and stuff. And then I came back and I worked, and I sold more shit, and I finally came back and moved out here permanently, shortly after that.
Okay, that's what I want to ask you about. That's really interesting to me, is the idea of just picking up and moving. When you move to the Czech Republic, first of all, are you in close proximity where you live to the other members of Crabathor? Do you have some sort of social network there?
That's how it worked. The guitar player was living from where I lived then. He was living about maybe 2 miles away with his parents. Mm-hmm. And the drummer coming from another village, and I really had nothing when I came out here. We rented I rented the apartment, and he would pick me up, and we practiced 5 days a week. That was just the start of my new life out here. We would just practice, and then also that first summer we did festivals all over Czech and some shows in Germany and Slovakia, and that lasted for about 4 years. And near the end of that, I got the guys from Crabathor to also record a master album with me as well to help me out. And again, this is how it all changed for me. Eventually, the guitar player would move to America and stay there, and I stayed in his hometown.
Wow.
We traded places, like the movie, trading places. That's exactly what happened, really.
Wow, so the guitarist of Crabathor now lives in it's not Chicago, is it?
No, I think he's in.
Because that would be
crazy.
crazy.
He lives in Portland now,
That's still crazy. And then
I think it's in Portland. He and I were living in Arizona together, and moving furniture together for a good year or two. We were coming out here and doing shows in Europe, and then we would go back to America, do some shows in America and Mexico, and then work.
Yeah.
And he would send money home, and I would send money to my girlfriend out here. That's how it was for many years, for a couple of years, And then eventually, like I said, he decided, well, I'm going to stay in America. And I said, well, I'm going back to Czech with my girlfriend, dude. And that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
And then I got together, some members from the studio where I recorded the first records with Crabathor and Martyr and stuff. The brother of the studio owner, he played guitar, and he had a great drummer. And we got together and formed a new master. And then I was with them for 16 years out here, playing and touring the world,
Wow, there's a lot there. Something because
That's a mouthful, yeah.
it's a wild story because it's like you said, you moved to the guy's hometown in the Czech Republic, you stay there, now he's living in the U.S. That's and a lot of traveling in between. Something I want to ask you though, when you first moved to the Czech Republic, obviously you know the guys in Krabathor, you're probably ingratiated to some people from the local metal scene that they know, but did you experience
Drinking a lot of beer, falling down drunk every day in the local pubs.
Well, did you have any issues? Was there any hostility or people that didn't take to you because you were American or just a foreigner in general?
No, just the opposite. That was a big problem, to be honest with you. Is that being the American guy, the quote unquote famous underground legend guy, everybody wanted to buy you a drink. So every fucking night, I was bombed out of my mind, falling down drunk every night for fucking 6 months. I swear. Wow. Drunk for 6 months every day. We went out every night.
Wow.
I can't believe my girlfriend, actually married me, and I obviously slowed down on my drinking before that happened. But Jesus, I used to be a fucking wreck. I was drunk every day. Man. It was a good time. Don't get me wrong. I had a good time, but
I'm sure.
But it was a bit much.
Wow.
It was just the opposite. People respected you because they knew who you were.
Okay. Okay, man. And now I'm 38 and I kind of came of age and got into death metal and underground music through the mid to late 90s. And by the 2000s, the early 2000s, me and a lot of my friends were following this kind of explosion of grindcore bands from the Czech Republic. Contrastic, Alienation Mental, Lycathia Aflame, Pigsty, to mention a few. Maybe you could just speak to because that was all going on while you were new to the country and going to shows, right?
Yeah, they call themselves Pigsty.
Pigsty, that's right. Okay,
I know it's Pigsty, but Pigsty, And anyway, I will say the one thing about the Czech Republic is that as for the grind scene, even today, it's like. The best grind bands come from the Czech Republic. I don't know. I don't know why, but they really got their grind shit down, and they've had it down ever since I moved here.
True.
Fleshless and all these different bands. Yeah, really. Yes. Pigsty, like you said. All these grindcore bands. They've always been the best at it. Let's just say, as often as I tour and stuff around the world, I was working for a touring agency for some years, for 7 or 8 years, I think. And I was doing merchandise and stuff for some years. And I would see grindcore bands that would buy onto the bus, every day. And again, like I said, and then we'd get to the Czech Republic, like maybe play a grind festival, and the Czechs would just slaughter everybody.
Yeah.
I would honestly never a big grind fan, but the point is that the Czechs would slaughter everybody at their grind. They were really good at what they do, That's all I can tell you. And it's still the same way, You can go into a small pub and see a great grindcore band, of course. Obviously, why do you think the Obscene Extreme is so successful,
Yeah. It's like I said, at years ago in the early 2000s, it became very apparent. Even into the 90s, you had like Malignant Tumor. I remember Hermaphrodite, things like that.
Malignant Tumor is still going strong right now, man.
Yeah.
Believe me.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. I remember we did Obscene Extreme with them in Japan in 2015. We had a blast, drunk together, for 3 days.
Wow. Now that we got into
I think the Malignant Tumor last year, they were having discussions with their bass player, and they offered me the job. I didn't take it, but it was still nice that they thought of me,
Yeah, that would have been quite a crossover there again,
They wrote me, Paul, we're looking for a new bass player, and we first thought you. And I went, oh, fuck. It was a nice offer anyway. I didn't take it, but it was a nice offer,
Yeah, like one of those What If comic books from back in the day.
Yeah,
That would have been a crossover, but while we're talking about the Czech Republic grindcore bands and death metal bands, there is a rich tradition over there in the Czech Republic and in Eastern Europe of death metal and grindcore that is a little bit under credited, maybe because the bands didn't have the proper promotion back in the day.
Yeah. The one cool thing is that back in the day when they were in the Eastern Bloc, they were still doing shows and stuff. 1,000 people coming to their gigs, and they were worried about the police coming to bust them. They were like in underground bunkers, and it's crazy stuff, really cool, Root and Krabathor and a lot of these different bands back in the day, 20 years ago, whatever, they were playing, like I said, underground bunkers and hidden and, worried about getting arrested. Crazy times before I got here, This is before I got here, of course, but.
Yeah, and I've heard you say that when you got there, respectfully, things were a little bit more run down.
Oh man, dude, I love telling that story because it's true, I remember when I came from Prague, I get it from the airport. Everything was fine in Prague. It's a beautiful city then too, and you start heading to where I live now, and everything was like all Russian architecture, no paint, everything was one color. I've been to Russia before too, and there's a lot of places there that are still like that as well. But obviously 20 years down the road, everything's painted here now. They got money from the European Union. They remodel everything. It's beautiful. But believe me, when I first came, I was terrified before I got to this city here where I live. I was just like, what the fuck? What have I done, It's really true. But like when you come into Brno now, when you come into the city that's not so far from me, these same buildings that I was talking about, they're all different colors now, orange and blue and red and green, different colors, but back then they were all one color and it was pretty scary. Believe me.
Yeah. We could talk about the differences all day, but like, what was like the biggest culture shock that took you the longest thing to get used to when you finally settled into living in the Czech Republic full time?
The biggest culture shock? Oh, that's a good question. Well, everything was so cheap, for one thing.
I'm looking for something bad, Paul. Come on.
There was something bad.
Wow, man.
Come on, I don't think anything bad. Everything was cheap. That was the point. I couldn't believe it. Like I said, everything was run down at the time, but everything was cheap. I mean, even today, you can still get a beer for $1. Well, it's still only about $1, maybe $1.10 for a fucking beer off the tap, and it's some of the best beer in the world.
Well,
I know in America, you're going to pay $5 for a crappy beer. It's still $1 here. Beer is still, and wine and Slivovitza, and this shit's all excellent. Good stuff here.
Well, that's.
I mean, if you're an alcoholic, I'm not an alcoholic. I have my occasional drinks, but if you're an alcoholic, this is the place to be.
You guys want to move headquarters?
Yes. Yeah, I know. That's what I'm joking when I say I want to hear something bad because we're all still over here in the U.S. We're getting depressed listening to you, man. But big shout to our beer sponsor, Atlas Brewery from Washington, D.C. Some of the best beer in the entire world.
Hell yeah. I'm sure it did.
But regardless, and they also host metal shows. So maybe when things get back to normalcy, they'll host Master one day. Who knows?
That'd be great. I hope so. I hope we can return to the USA one day, of course.
Well, speaking of that, Paul, something I wanted to ask you is, and on that note, is there anything that you do get nostalgic for about the United States, about Chicago, maybe Arizona, somewhere you lived? Is there just something that, when you go on tour, you got to stop and see or get? Or is there something you think about when you think about the United States that makes you nostalgic for home?
Well, yeah, you're at the gas station, you want Chips Ahoy.
Wow. Wow.
Chips Ahoy and a big container of milk,
Wow, so you can't really get to that in the Czech like that?
You actually could do it now. They have like American shops now where they're they're transporting all these American goods. I mean, you could actually get it, but who the fuck wants to pay $5 for a fucking bag of Chips Ahoy? Not me. It's ridiculous. Come on, man.
Right. I get it. Okay, so.
There's a lot of Americans in Prague and stuff, and I'm sure that they're buying this stuff, obviously. How else are these people, staying in business? Also, I like peanut butter. Okay, you can get peanut butter in Europe and stuff, but, there's nothing like fucking Skippy peanut butter or, it's a special peanut butter, Yeah. It's like in America, it's just special things that you can only get in America. I mean, you can buy it here again, or you can have somebody send it to you or whatever. But there's just certain things. I like American peanut butter. I like Chips Ahoy. But, some shit you grew up with, you're never gonna forget.
Yeah.
And it sounds silly, but it's inborn in your brain. Whatever.
No, it's true, man. That's true. Everybody has things like that. That's kind of what I was getting at. And I'm setting you up too because I want to talk a little bit. There's so many master albums. We could be here all day, and it seems like. If it's fair to say, you became a lot more prolific and productive once you made that move to the Czech Republic, because we go from a kind of scattered master lineup for the last 10 to 15 years in the U.S. With different record deals and things going on to like just straight up putting out an album almost every year or every 2 years.
Yeah. Well, like I said, when I got that band together, we were together for 16 years. So
wow.
And yeah, of course, every year or every 2 years. I wrote so many songs that we got to do another album, and the guys were always up for that, and that's why I was so productive. It was nice to have a solid lineup for so long, but things change. It was like a marriage or whatever. You're with people every day for 16 years. I took the guys all over the world, to South America, Central America, Mexico. Everywhere in Europe you can imagine. I took them to Japan. I showed these guys a lot of stuff. And toward the end there, they just always wanted more. It was never enough. Never enough money. Oh, we need more money. Oh, we need more food. I'm hungry and I'm thirsty. Yeah. More. And the problem was with the guys that they didn't realize is that unlike bands like Motorhead or Metallica or whatever, they get more money every year. Well, with Master, you're getting the same money for the shows, sometimes less every year, You're just happy to be out there touring, and the guys took it for granted after a while. I paid them all the time, but they got to the point where, I want more, and it was like, if I'm giving you more before you know it, I'm getting less than you are. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. Underground death metal is a tough game.
And so they quit, and now they're doing their own underground thing. The band that they quit when they joined me 16 years ago. This is 18 years ago now because I've been with them for 2 years, coming up soon. And, they're seeing nobody's interested in their old band. After 16 years, nobody gives a rat's ass about their old band. And they're seeing that. I know that. Mm-hmm. The guitar players already started writing me. Hey, Paul, just because we're not in the band together, we don't have to be enemies. And the mail before that, 6 months ago, hey, Paul, I know we're having hard times with the virus. We can record a new album for you, but not tell anybody,
Wow.
They want to come back. Well, it's obvious, they had it good. And they just, sometimes when you got it too good, you make mistakes. And, after 16 years of having extra money every year, they had it good with me. And then all of a sudden, they don't have that money anymore. Nothing going on anymore in their lives. They're just working,
Grass is always greener.
And that's life. Okay? I'm not disrespecting them here. That's life, They quit. They made their choice,
Grass is always
They were
greener.
great musicians. We did a lot of good records together. No doubt.
Well, one record that I did want to kind of zero in on while we're talking to you is The Spirit of the West from 2004.
Okay.
And because I wanted to ask you some questions, I felt like maybe is it fair for me to say that maybe this album or to ask you, were you in some way processing leaving the United States behind and growing up in the United States and moving to a new country with some of your work on that album?
Sure. Of course.
I mean,
this was the first album with the guys.
Yeah.
And also what's interesting to make a note of is that at this time, nobody spoke English and nobody spoke Czech. Meaning I spoke not a single word of Czech and they spoke not a single word of English. So this was really difficult. I got a new band together. I'm in the rehearsal studio, whatever, the rehearsal room. And my girlfriend at the time is there. And she's translating, do this 4 times and do this 5 times. And, so what I would do is I would pick up the guitar. I would show the guitar player the riff on the guitar, hand it to them. And then eventually they learned, about how many times. That one wasn't so difficult, but it was strange in the beginning. And then after like 1 or 2 rehearsals, my girlfriend never came again. So I had to just make faces and use my hands and, And this is how we did that record. We did it this way for 2 months of rehearsals. Still no real communication because we couldn't speak to each other except with hands and sign language. And we recorded that Spirit of the West record, really. And obviously, every year after that, it got to be better and better because I started taking the guys on tour. And the drummer, he learned English. He still speaks English, I'm sure. But he learned English because we were touring with British bands, American bands. All bands on tour have to speak English on the tour bus. So this was a good one for the drummer. He learned how to speak English. But I'm just saying the beginning was hard times. But going back to what you said, yeah, the Spirit of the West was really about America. Quite a bit about my changeover. You're right. That's a good point.
Well, yeah, I found it very striking while doing the research because the cover of the album is basically you portrayed as an Old West gunslinger.
Well, that had a lot to do with the record company. It was his idea, but I like the idea.
It's different for death metal, but if you know the story,
like Johnny Cash had just passed away, and I was like, "Hey, we should do a cover of Johnny Cash, "The Ring of Fire," and that's what changed the whole idea. We did The Ring of Fire, and then I started writing lyrics, more Western lyrics on some of the other songs as well.
Yeah,
it wasn't planned that way, but it just kind of fell into that way. And then the record company is like, Paul, well, why don't we just do a Western layout? You can come to Germany. There's an old Western town made up make-believe Western town that this old guy, he's on the record, whatever, picture of him he's got. And we went in there and shot pictures, and it was a fucking blast,
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's fun. I still have a picture of my cousin and I and my parents when I was a little kid from something similar at an amusement park here. We're all dressed up as cowboys.
Perfect.
But
so like you said, then I just decided, well, let's just make the whole fucking thing about the West.
Well, yeah, and I read the lyrics because obviously, Master's lyrics have, you're kind of known for having more of a sarcastic, I don't know if you even want to call it political, but like a real life, like more influenced by hardcore take on your lyrics. Master fans kind of know you and love you for that. Whereas on this album, some of the songs I felt like had more of a nostalgic, even poetic, like the song Pistols, Whips, and Coyotes has a very poetic take on the American frontier. It's almost like a poem about the American frontier.
I said I wanted to go with a Western theme after that Ring of Fire, so I thought this Pistol, Whips, and Coyotes was right up that alley. It's not the best song in the record, but whatever,
Well, I'm just talking about lyrically. It was a different departure for Master, and it kind of reflects that part of your life. And then you have even the other song that struck me was and got me kind of going down this train of thought. Another Day in Phoenix.
Okay.
That was interesting to me too.
I'll tell you that one. I'll tell you what happened with that one. Okay.
Okay.
Another Day in Phoenix. That's the backups are my wife and her two sisters on that one. And we sampled the horns from Johnny Cash, which was illegal, but back then you got away with it. And we sampled the girls on the Ring of Fire too, and we actually sampled Johnny Cash on one line on there too. If you really listen to that Ring of Fire cover, you can hear Johnny, and it's awesome,
Yeah, it's
anyway,
an interesting composition.
Is this Another Day in Phoenix? Is I lost my van when I moved to the Czech Republic. They finally repoed it. I only owed like maybe $600 by that time after paying it off, $20,000 or whatever. And let's just say my family members, some of them are millionaires or whatever. Let's just say back then they wouldn't lend me the money to pay the damn thing off, and they repoed it. And so that's what that song's about. I woulda, coulda, shoulda, but I didn't. I should have paid the $600, but I didn't have any money, and nobody would help me out.
Yeah.
And by that time, I was living here, playing concerts, and trying to start a new life.
Yeah, you got to shift your priorities around. So.
Yeah, and so I lost my van, and so I had to write a song about it, of course.
Well, I mean, it's so.
That's where it says 20,000 in the hole,
Well, what I mean,
I paid 20,000, and they repoed it, and they sold it for $1,000 to somebody, and it was like, fuck, man, the van ran great. I lost it, so I wrote a song about it. So that's what it's about.
I just had to bring it up because it speaks to how, like, it's very what a country and blues type of thing to write a song about is losing your vehicle to the bank, right? I mean.
Yeah.
That's country music in a way right there. And I just wanted to bring that up because, like I said, we talked about you moving to the Czech Republic. We talked about, what makes you nostalgic for the United States or anything. And I thought that album in particular kind of spoke to that that transition, So
that's true.
So, like I said, Paul, you've had a lot going on. We've talked about a lot. We're thankful for your time, and we're going to be respectful of your time.
I'm enjoying myself. I like talking about it. That's great.
Awesome, man, because I do have a few more questions here. And I know, you're famously known to be a bass player and vocalist throughout most of the projects you're involved in.
Sure.
But the last several years, you've been part of Johansson and Speckmann with Raga Johansson, who people know from... Roga, pardon me, who people know from a multitude of other bands.
It's like Roger in Swedish, Roga, yeah.
Roga Johansson, yes.
Yeah.
And you guys are kind of like a meeting of the minds in death metal. I love that you guys didn't pick some sort of like death metal moniker name for this. You just go by your last names, as would like, classical musicians or jazz players or something like that.
Well, that's his idea, yo. It's his idea and his band, to be honest, But I was saying earlier on that what I like about it, and actually, funny that you mentioned that, he sent me a new song today for number 6.
Mm-hmm.
The 5th Johansson Speckmann was just released like 2 months ago, but anyway, we're going to start working on a new album now. I'll be in the studio next week singing the first 2 songs. We're doing a new album already. But what's cool about it, like I said, is he'll write a full album of songs. There's like 12 songs coming. And then in Norway, the other guy puts the drums down. And then, like I said, Roga plays the bass, the guitar, and then they send it to me, and then I go to the studio. I write all the lyrics, and then I go to the studio and sing, and then they mix and master it. Like I said, I do it with these guys, but it'll never happen with Master,
Mm-hmm.
Because Master, it's just got to really be done right here. That's just the way I feel about it,
Yeah, I understand. And Master comes from a very old school place, whereas the nature of Johansson and Speckmann is more of a project. You're working on it. But
I'm saying I don't mind doing it because, like I said, I get to write my own lyrics and sing them however the hell I want. And there's no input from the guys. They don't tell me where to sing, what to do, nothing. It's just, Paul, here's the new album, or here's the first 2 songs from the new album like I got today. Good luck, I like that. And then I'll once the songs are done, I'll download them and I'll go to the studio and bring them to my guy in the studio, and then I'll start singing them 2 at a time every week for the next 6 weeks.
I was going to say, does it feel like more freeing in a way to not have to worry about any of the music or laying down bass and just kind of go over it as a vocalist?
It's great.
Less pressure, right?
Yeah, there's no pressure really, yeah. I mean, obviously I'm trying to sing good and stuff, and I'm old and stuff, but many people are saying the number 5 or whatever 2 months ago, they were saying that's the best vocals I did in many years. So the next one's going to be the same, of course, Well, I quit smoking, and it helps,
Wow, yeah, I'm sure it helps. And on that note, I mean, you've been doing the extreme vocals for a very long time, consistently through the years. Have you ever had a point where you lost your voice? Have you ever not been able to do a show because you lost your voice or something like that?
No, I never canceled a show in my life.
Wow.
But
flex.
Yeah, like let's say last year or whatever, October tour, I was up all night doing cocaine, which is not normal for me, but whatever. A friend of mine, he blasted me a couple of cocaine lines on my hand there at 2:00 in the morning, and when you're doing cocaine, you're smoking a lot. So I was smoking lots of cigarettes. I was smoking like a whole pack probably by morning, and then I got on stage in Belgium, and I had trouble with that show. But thankfully, the next day, my voice was back completely to normal. So I learned a lesson again. You're never too old to learn. No cocaine on tour,
Yeah, that's a good pointer. Well, now something I neglected to bring up earlier, and you speak very candidly about this, and I ask this respectfully because I've heard you speak openly about it in a prior interview, was that in the late 80s, the members of Master, allegedly there was a lot of cocaine use.
Oh yeah, Master and Abomination too.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
I,
Yeah,
I,
the original Abomination demos was all cocaine for sure, dude. We were speeding on that stuff.
so that's the
You know?
first album with the time signature stuff.
No, the demos, not the albums, but the demos. The first 2 demos,
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Off our rocker back then,
Well, I mean, I have a friend who, I won't mention his name, but he was partying pretty hard during that time period too, and he tells me that back then the cocaine was a totally different animal than today. He said it was way more pure. He calls it the Pablo era, that sort of thing.
Yeah, sure.
Wow, man.
And I'm not going to say who, but one of the guys was. Let's just say one of the guys in one of the bands was a dealer, so we got the best stuff.
Nice.
I'm not going to say who, but just
Yeah.
got the best stuff for sure, and it was free, So
Yeah, allegedly. I'm sure the statute of limitations is over, and all that coke is long gone.
yeah, it was a long time ago,
Interesting, man. And the '80s. We talk about a lot of
Wait,
times.
I wanted to go back to one thing really quick.
Sure.
So about losing your voice. What I found that you have to do is really quick is when there's a tour coming up, I have to sing in the basement like for maybe 2 months if I don't have a band, for example, or whatever. Like the guys are in America, whatever, and I have to sing for 2 months, like 3 or 4 days a week, every week. I have to be ready for the tour, You have to sing the set. I usually play bass and sing in the basement, and I played a show 3 or 4 days a week, sometimes 5 days a week for several months. And then when I get there, it's simple. But years ago, I wasn't that smart. 20 years ago when I started doing this stuff, yeah, you could lose your voice if you didn't practice enough. I learned that early on, and it's important. You gotta scream your ass off often before you go on a tour. Otherwise, you're going to run into trouble.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe the younger guys don't have trouble, but I'm saying us older guys, you got to be ready for a tour.
Yeah.
Now go. What's the next question? Sorry.
Oh yeah, no, but that's just like a prolonged warm-up period when you're doing something that extreme. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. So that kind of brings us, up to date, and like everybody we've talked to, the coronavirus kind of hit everybody. We know that you make your living as a touring musician and stuff, so it probably hit you especially hard this year, right? I'm sure you had to cancel a lot of shows.
Yeah. Yeah. The last shows were in Mexico in March. That was a long time ago,
Were you able to at least complete the tour, or was it like a situation
where we shows in March. Yeah, it was like a week of shows for Death Strike, and it's like when we got to let me think about it here. Okay, we started in Mexico, or we did Costa Rica, then we did El Salvador and Honduras. And I remember it might have been Honduras when we got off the plane. They put that temperature thing on your head. That was the first time I'd ever seen it. Obviously, it's everywhere now.
Yeah.
But this was a surprise, That was the first time I'd seen it. People weren't wearing masks or anything yet either, But all of a sudden, the lady puts the temperature thing on my head, and she showed me the temperature. Okay, you can go. And I'm like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
Little did I know what we were headed for after that.
Yeah.
That can't be good.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, here in New York, we know there's no shows coming on anytime soon. Where you're at, is there anything picking up in Europe, in the Czech Republic? Is there live music coming up? Or
there's like for example, Asphyx has been doing a couple of shows, and they probably have a couple more shows coming up. Like in Holland and Germany, they have special shows, like where you're going to play on Friday, and it's seated people in a theater, and there's a limited amount of people, 100 or 200 people. So it sells out right away. It's interesting. People have to sit down. You're far away from the stage. There's no slam dancing or dancing. You have to sit,
Yeah.
But, good for the bands that can do that. But like I told you, my band, the guys are in America, so it doesn't work for me. You need to have a band to be able to play 1 or 2 shows a month. You got to have guys that are local, of course,
Yeah. Is it too soon to
There's
say?
no tours going on. There's no tours going on. No, not at all, man. It sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody's
I
hurting.
had shows scheduled for South America. I had shows scheduled for Australia, for Asia. You know, we had a couple European tours, a lot of stuff scheduled this year, and obviously it's all canceled. Nothing I can do. You know, the guys are stuck in America, and not too many Americans are flying over here. It's not so easy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just to get money to fly them over. With nothing going on. Something.
Yeah,
that,
I mean, exactly. You can't have the guys come over here and sit around my house for a month for one show. You know.
Yeah. Your wife probably wouldn't appreciate it.
No.
So, I mean, with that being said, you guys, you put out the Germs of Circumstance is the 2020 latest album from Johansson and Speckmann. You said you're working on another one. Is there anything else that fans of your work can check out? I mean, we talked about the show situation. I guess there's probably no plans for a live stream event or anything like that. Is there any?
No, there's another thing too. Just my opinion. I'm not into that either, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if I had a band, I'm not going to do a live stream. That's not fucking metal, man. I'm sorry. I know a lot of my friends are doing live streams. Okay, good luck for you guys, but that's nothing for me, dude. If there ain't no people here, I ain't doing nothing, man. Come on.
Yeah, I gotta respect it. Man. I understand. It's not surprising to hear you say that. I understand definitely. We've been trying to cover it and see what goes on. It's it's never going to be the same as an actual real life show.
I have 10 shows scheduled for April in Spain. I have 6 shows or 7 shows scheduled in Ukraine for May. But I don't know. I have to wait and see what happens in January if it can really be possible, because this stupid virus keeps flaring up.
Yeah. Everybody's kind of waiting on the edge of their seat to see what happens next, man.
Yeah, it's a great way for the government to control everybody too and tell you what to do and when to do it. It's a shitty time right now,
Yeah, I've heard you speak to something like that in older interviews from years past.
I feel the same way now too,
Yeah, here we are, Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a lot of the shit. Like the Human Machine album, that talks a lot about it. And here we are.
Yeah.
It's scary, man. I really hope it's something changes. We all do.
Of course. Yeah, interesting time, man. And with that being said, the latest Master album was Vindictive Miscreant on Transcending Obscurity. I believe it's still available in some formats, and people can always get it on Bandcamp or whatever the digital format is.
Sure.
I mentioned Johansson. It's probably Johansson and Speckmann, right? Because they're from Sweden. The Germs of Circumstance. Now, the Germs of Circumstance, that's not just a coincidentally titled album, right?
Yeah, actually. You didn't ask me about songwriting.
About songwriting?
Yeah, you didn't really ask me about songwriting, and it's just a strange one that I got to tell you.
Yeah, lay it on us, man.
Even for example, today, Johansson sent me a song today, like I said, and an hour later I finished the lyrics. I write songs in a strange way. Like when he sends me stuff, I just I write whatever comes to my mind. I'll listen to a song 2 or 3 times, and usually I'll have the whole thing written in a short time,
Okay.
And it's the same with the master records, the last 5 or 6 albums. I write the music first, and then I listen to the music on cassette or whatever format I can get it on, and the lyrics just kind of come to me, Like I don't like back in the early days, I had on the Seventh Day God Created Master, I wrote about specific subjects, and I actually really thought about the stuff. And now, like for example, the Germs of Circumstance, these words just came out and seemed to be fitting, and it worked, I think it comes from reading so much. I read books all the time, mostly murder mysteries, but still.
Wow. All right.
But I read a lot. I read every day, and words just come to my mind, and sometimes they're great, and sometimes they're okay. You know what I mean.
You hit a flow, and so you say you read a lot. Maybe what are you reading right now? What are some books you've been reading lately? I'm just reading murder mysteries and stuff. All different people. I just go on Amazon and I look for books and I just buy them. Yeah. It's like I like reading about like I said, murder and
I also like reading about rock stars. I'm reading the next book is that the Who, the guitar player. That's the next book. I read Roger Daltrey's book too. Next is Pete Townsend. I read the bass player from Alice Cooper. I like reading about these guys and see what the hell happened in their lives as well. That's something else I really like.
Yeah. I actually read a few books about Joey Ramone. That I was talking about on the podcast a while back. That's always interesting to read about some of these people we look up to in rock music.
Yeah, like I said, and yeah, go ahead. What were we gonna say?
Well, no, just on that note, I was gonna say you also had a book published. It was a pictorial book with some of the history of your music. Speckmann, Underground Survivor, the pictorial.
Sure. Yeah, that's still out there. It's still available. If anybody wants to buy it, get a hold of me.
Well, it's on your website, right? You have a website where you sell a lot of your merchandise.
Sure.
I'm looking for it right now. What's the address? Do you have it?
Speckmann, speckmetal.com or something.
We can edit this part to make it sound smooth. Don't worry.
Yeah, right.
It's the one thing I didn't write down. Hold on a second.
No problem.
Yeah, so the website is speckmetal.net, SPECKmetal.net. Just for the listeners, if anybody wants to check out what merchandise is available, look into that book. And I understand there were plans for like a more, not just a pictorial, but like a formal autobiography book at one point. Is that still a plan?
Yeah, it's when I retire, but I'm not ready for that yet.
I love it. That's a great answer. That's a great answer, man.
It'll be time to slam everybody when I retire. You don't want to do that when you're still traveling the world. Then you're going to be in a fight all the time with all these dickheads, I mean, there's a bunch of shit talking about a bunch of assholes in the business, and the interview, I didn't talk about any assholes. I try and not talk about assholes, when I'm doing interviews. But eventually, when the book comes out, a lot of people are going to be pissed off, and it's better to do it when I retire,
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, man.
The truth hurts,
we would love to pick up this interview when you're ready to do that too. That'd be great.
No problem.
Well, on that note, one last question before we wind things down.
Sure.
We always ask our guests if they could, and this might be difficult because I've heard you say in the past that you don't keep up on a lot of newer music. You stay with the classics that inspire you. But we always ask the guests to recommend one older album and one newer album by any artist. Doesn't have to be metal, just something older and something newer that Paul Speckmann recommends we check out.
Shit. That's a tough one. Motorhead, No Sleep Till Hammersmith, of course.
Okay.
And something new? Shit. I don't listen to anything new. That's a problem.
That's why I was curious.
Yeah, I don't listen to anything new, so you're not gonna get anything from me.
All right, we'll double down on the old one then. What's another old one to recommend?
Huh?
We'll double down on the old then. What's another older one that you recommend?
How about Rainbow Rising? I'm really old,
Rainbow Rising. And Motorhead, what was it, No Sleep Till Hammersmith?
Yeah.
Okay.
The first double, yeah, for sure.
Okay, man. All right, solid picks. And Paul, like I said, to be respectful of your time and of our format, we really appreciate everything that we just talked about. We appreciate having you on today, man. This was awesome.
I had a good time too. Thank you very much for your time as well. It was a blast.
Yeah, dude. It was great to just kind of hash out, like we said, you have a long discography. As I mentioned before, just for the listeners, the latest Johansson and Speckmann album is The Germs of Circumstance, 2020.
What a hell of a coincidence, out of Germs of Circumstance.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. But you got that third eye thing going with the lyrics nowadays. You're in the flow.
Yeah, that's true,
the most recent master album is Vindictive Miscreant on Transcending Obscurity. If people want to go back and check out Crabathor, that's highly recommended. And the albums Unfortunately Dead and Dissuade Truth are the albums that feature you, Paul, right?
Yeah. And everybody hated them, but they're good albums anyway.
I thought they were good. I thought they went a little bit more of a grindcore, brutal direction for Crabathor, if anything.
Yeah, well, the Czech and the Slovak people didn't like the records, but it doesn't matter. That's life, Bill. I don't care.
You can't please everybody,
Yeah.
So, Paul, with that in mind, just any final message to followers and fans of your music throughout the years and listeners to our program?
Yeah, support the underground, support the old school, be careful out there, and don't let your governments control your life, man. Keep fighting out there in the streets, man. That's all I can say.
Hell yeah.
Scary times, yo.
Yeah.
You know, we want to be free, yo.
Yep, absolutely.
Paul Speckmann of Master and many other projects and bands throughout the years. We thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it, brother. And we will be in touch with you in the next few weeks as the episode is produced and uploaded, okay?
All right, you guys have a good afternoon, yo.
All right. Thanks, man.
Thank you very much, man.
Really appreciate
Bye.
it.
Yeah, cheers. We'll be in touch.
Thanks, Paul.